In order to benefit all sentient beings, let's give rise to the Supreme Bodhicitta. Let's now continue with our class on the Surangama Sutra. And now, when we look at the Surangama Sutra from the history, it has been an important text for the Buddhists to study, and it's such a profound teaching for the Buddhists to study, especially for people who study the Han Buddhism, the Chinese Buddhism in mainland. And it is a necessary sutra for people to study. From the history, we can see that whatever school that you come from, whatever school that you study in fact, the Buddhists have deep understanding, and placed a great importance on the Surangama Sutra. But now, because of due to various reasons, and because of lots of factors, in fact, not many people are studying the Surangama Sutra. But time is changing. Same as our studying, meditation, and our contemplation and practice. In fact, lots of the causes and the situations are also changing quite quickly and ever-changing, in fact. So when we're studying the Surangama Sutra, I noticed that from my observation, I think a majority of you are studying with great attentiveness, and I'm very happy about it. But at the same time, I really hope that you should be prepared. Doesn't matter how long you're planning to study here, I really want you to prepare yourself to study all the way through, because it's probably going to take a long time. And there are people who didn't start studying from the beginning. Then I really want to encourage you to study all the way through till the end, or at least attend as many classes as possible. I only have the oral transmission of the last 2 volumes, not the ones before that. But when we are studying the teachings of the Buddha, I think we'll be able to still receive all the blessings and the wisdom of the Buddha. So during our study, I really hope that you cherish this opportunity to listen to this teaching. I know that lots of people would listen to the class at the beginning. When we begin some classes, maybe they just want to have auspicious cause at the beginning, and maybe they don't want to study afterwards, or maybe they're no longer in the human realm anymore. Anyhow, they would attend the first one class, and that could be their way of studying the sutra. But the majority of us, I really think that you're listening attentively, you then start well, and then you're listening all the way through till the end of the class. So that's really wonderful. And now let's continue with the sutra, with the class. We've already finished the 7 ways or 7 attempts of searching for the mind. And over here, Ananda said that I received lots of affection from the Buddha, but though I listened to lots of your teachings, but I have to practice more. Maybe when he encounters some obstacles, he feels that he needs practice. So over here, the Buddha started to give the teaching on the samadhi, on the actual practice. So Ananda first prostrated to the Buddha with the full prostration, where his 5 limbs are on the ground. And then the entire assembly also stood over there on tiptoe and waiting attentively to listen to the teachings and instructions of the Buddha. In fact, I think the Buddha has this heart-to-heart connection to Ananda, and they really understood each other. So Ananda continuously to pose questions, and the Buddha continuously to answer Ananda's questions. If Ananda were only to ask one or two questions, then rather the Surangama Sutra would be compiled as a very thin, very short sutra. But Ananda continuously to ask questions, to pose questions, and then that is how we receive the profound teaching from the Buddha. And from our current situation, what we can see as well is that there are disciples who deeply understood what the teacher want to teach, and then they would use their skillful ways to try to ask as many questions and try to ask the teacher to give as many teachings as possible. If the students, disciples around a teacher doesn't have lots of longing to receive teachings from the Buddha, from the teacher, then the teachings won't be so abundant after the passing of the teacher. Therefore, the contribution of the Lama or contribution of the teacher really depends on one hand of the teacher's wisdom, compassion, as well as his strength. The other hand would be how the students are, whether the students are skillful, whether the students are on the path of searching for wisdom and compassion. So it really has these two main factors. In the Agama Sutra, at the beginning of the Agama Sutra, there was a sutra. It is called the Differences of Merit Sutra, or the chapter of it. Over there, it stated that why the Buddha took Ananda as his attendants. It is said that, first of all, because Ananda does not search or long for only his own realization, rather he tried to get as much as answers out of the Buddha, and he really understood what the Buddha want to teach or want to say. So it's quite important for the disciples to understand the meaning, the true meaning of the teacher. Otherwise, there are disciples who don't understand what the teacher meant. For example, if the teacher said that I don't think. For example, the teacher said that he doesn't like to beg for alms, and then the student said, "No, that's not true. In fact, what the teacher said is only meaning that he definitely needs money. Therefore, you should offer him." And there are students who then interpret the teacher's teaching by saying that, oh, the instruction of the teacher for the students to study, contemplate, and practice is really very relative. What he meant is that you should volunteer and serve the Sangha, and vice versa. So I think to understand the meaning of the Lama or the teacher is really crucial. While we, on the surface, we do have this hierarchy, that we have the manager, we have the Dharma teacher, we have the teachers, we have the high lamas and all that. But for the students whomsoever are serving them, you should have understanding of their true meanings instead of interpreting them in the wrong way, which could mislead others. So let's look at the sutra. Over here, the Buddha is about to turn the profound Dharma, and he said that then the world-honored one radiated forth from his face various kinds of light, dazzling light as brilliant as hundreds of thousands of suns. So from the face of the Buddha, the 5 colored lights were radiated from the Buddha, and the lights are very brilliant. And this kind of light are just like hundreds of thousands of suns radiating this world simultaneously. But the light that radiates from the face of the Buddha is a bit different than the ones that's radiated from the sun. Because if there were hundreds and thousands of suns that's radiating at the same time, then we cannot look at all. But the light that radiates from the face of the Buddha is rather very dazzling and beautiful to look at. And Mianmen, which is in Chinese, but what it is translated directly is the face door. From some of the teachings, it is stated that it is the light that radiated from his mouth. And from the Tibetan version, it is stated that it is the light that radiated from the center of his the center white hair in the middle of his eyebrows. In fact, when we read the sutras, there are different kinds of places where the Buddha would radiate lights. Sometimes his face, sometimes his middle of between the eyebrows, and in fact they have different meanings. For example, the light that radiates from the middle of between his eyebrows is in fact is a teaching of the Mahayana. And if it were radiated from the mouth, then it is a teaching of the 3 yanas. Some masters, including Master Zixuan, in his commentary, he said that Surangama Sutra was taught after the Avatamsaka Sutra and before the Parinirvana Sutra. Why is that? He listed 2 reasons. And the first one is that, first of all, at the beginning of this sutra, Pasenati will then tell his own story of how he saw the river Ganges when he was young, and now he sees the Ganges rivers and all that. And then later on, there was the story of the son of King Pasenati, whose name is Virudaka, and the conflicts that's about to happen between Virudaka and the clan of Shakyamuni. So through such kind of teachings, we can see that it is in fact not just at one particular time or at one particular place that this sutra was taught. Another reason, the second reason, is that in fact in the Avatamsaka Sutra, the Buddha gave the prediction for the arhats to be enlightened, to attain full enlightenment as well, or Shravakas to attain full enlightenment as well. And then all the Shravakas were very happy about it. And then in the Mahaparinirvana Sutra, where the Buddha also radiated the light from his face and passed into parinirvana. And before that, he asked if there are questions to be asked. And if there were no questions, he would then pass into parinirvana. So there is something very similar as well. Therefore, we can see that the teaching of the Surangama Sutra is taught between the Avatamsaka Sutra and the Parinirvana Sutra. And over here, the 6 kinds of quakes pervaded the Buddha realms in various Buddha realms. In other sutras, we also talked about it, the 6 kinds of earthquakes, such as movements, such as erupting and heaving up, and different kinds of sounds. different kinds of cracking sounds. In fact, these kind of sounds or movements are perceived only with a realization, for people with a realization, rather than the actual earthquakes. The signs of such auspicious quaking happen at that time. Usually, there are different kinds of would indicate different auspicious signs, such as if there was a Buddha or someone who attained enlightenment. Just as when we look at beautiful kinds of clouds or the auspicious rainbows, different kind of auspicious signs that would shine forth, then it indicates something that is very auspicious. There are Sangha members who are very attracted to rainbows. When I was young, when I heard the yaks, I didn't recognize those rainbows. I didn't regard those rainbows as auspicious signs, because when I was herding, I could see rainbows everywhere. In the mountains, it is very common to rain the summer seasons, and the rainbow would appear very often. So it is not very necessary to recognize all rainbows as auspicious signs. Sometimes there are auras around the sun, and there are people who would consider that as auspicious signs. And there are people who would consider that if someone passes away around that period of time, and they think that is the best sign of auspicious death. And they would Photoshop it on computer and on the photographs, and they would consider that as very auspicious. But that is not necessarily true. But over here, the kind of quaking that's pervaded in Buddha realms, this kind of quaking is not only, or it doesn't just particularly shows that it's outside. It could be that the inner quakings, if something that is very auspicious happening outside, then there must be something auspicious happening innerly. There are the kind of quaking happens in our hearts. For example, when you meet with some great master with great realization, even if you listen to one class, even if you just meet him, at that time and listening to his teaching, you would feel very much shook up from the bottom of your heart. All of your previous value systems would be completely transformed. And rather than the external quakings, it is the inner quakings. There are tourists who would come to Larangar, and when they get to the tip of the mountains and look down, they would say that, wow, this is so amazing. And when they have such kind of feeling of something is very different, then the mentality could also change, and their way of looking at life could also change. And maybe that could become a source of strength where they would change their view of life, and it could plant a seed on their alaya. So the lands as many as 5 motes of dust throughout the 10 directions appeared simultaneously. In fact, at that one moment, simultaneously, all the Buddha realms of the 10 directions appeared. And then with the Buddha's numinous penetration, all the countries of the 10 directions became one. And the Buddha's awesome spirit caused all realms to unite into a single realm, and in these realms, all the great bodhisattvas, each remaining in their own country, put their palms together and listened. It sounds quite difficult to imagine, isn't it? But we can reflect upon our modern technology. In fact, if we were to use technology of internet and a computer, if you were to click open one application and then many things would open, and if you were to close this application, everything would then be condensed into this one logo or into this one icon. Also, look at how you are listening to this class. Many people are listening to this class through internet, and not only you can listen to it, you can actually see it as well. And you have not even left your home. There are people who thought that how could it be possible? How could you say that Buddha had the numinous penetration of transforming one to many and many to one? That is not possible. But let's look at the numinous penetration of the scientists. They can then transform all of those into one, and they can transform one into many as well. From our audio, from our visual, all different kind of information. In fact, many people from different places in the world, they can then look at the visual, they can listen to the audio, and they can join with different people from many different places in this world, and they can have an online meeting. There are people who would ask that, can we then share the scent and touches? But that's not possible yet because the audio and video are waves, therefore they are physical waves. But the scent as well as touches are more molecular, on the molecular level. According to Abhidharma, it is talked that there are different kinds of forms and the different kinds of matters that would form into forms, touches, senses, and so on. So it's all of different kinds of particles. The one transformed to many and many transformed to one, the not coming and not going, all of these kind of numinous penetrations are then shared and enjoyed by many people around the world. Though the listeners are not bodhisattvas and the teacher is not a Buddha, but you are now enjoying the numinous penetration that is very similar to that. You can stay at your own home or your own country to listen to the class that's far away, and you can then even see the person who is giving the teaching. So why don't we seize the opportunity and use this skillful means to then study and listen to the Dharma classes online? Doesn't matter whatever happens over here in Larangar, including a few years back, the changes that happened here, and a decade ago that the changes happened over here. In fact, we had never stopped our studies. Sometimes we would take some time to take a vacation or so, but that's okay. But mostly what's really important is that after studying and after you have the opportunity of internet, you can study online. You can study in groups online, and you can study on your own. Even if we don't have this kind of classes online right now, then you can study on your own for a month or 3 months or so. Sometimes it's necessary. And I think what's really important is that within that time period, you should then try to study on your own so that you don't really stop that flow of study. We can use video streaming, we can use electric, or we can use e-books, and we can use all different kinds of skillful means.
我要这个发行人员的一些发奖啊，还有呢就是我们就是
In terms of
管理上面吧，
other kinds of
管理上
management,
面的话呢，就是可能是这个包括这个研讨啊，就是研讨
including discussion groups, including different kinds of
包括一些
classes.
这个资料的这个提供，这些的话呢，
I
我们
think
部分是可以给大家
I
就是
I think we can share those information and those kind of material and resources with you. Or at the beginning of next year, we can provide you with some skillful means to support your self-learning. What's most important is that it doesn't matter how the situation changes, that you should in fact persevere in your studying and contemplation and practice. With the changes of time, I think it is quite important to continuously to study and invest your time in such a way. Maybe because of the change of time and the differences of time, we have to make some changes, but what's necessary is that you would use all the skillful means to study. The management team, I think you should be skillful, you should be wise so that you can use all different kind of skillful means to benefit others, and you should have wisdom so that you can help yourself as well as others to finish their study. Over here it says that the bodhisattvas each remaining in their own country, in their Buddha field, and they are listening to the teachings of the Buddha. We're at rather a very special time. Let's look at how it was decades ago or hundreds of years ago, where the great masters, in order to receive the Dharma, they would cross miles of mountains and numerous rivers to receive the precious Dharma. But now, in fact, you don't have to go through all the hardships anymore, but you can receive the Dharma rather very conveniently. And with such kind of convenience and skillful means present, and if you do not study, then that will be quite pitiful and it will be quite regrettable later on. Over here, all the bodhisattvas fold their hands and listening to the teaching of the Buddha. And then at that time, the Buddha said to Ananda, because the Buddha in fact is in the same place, at the same place as the Ananda. All the bodhisattvas are in their own Buddha fields, and the bodhisattvas, while listening to the teaching of the Buddha, and they fold their hands and listen, maybe they can see them as well. So the Buddha then said to Ananda, all living beings from beginningless time onward and in all kinds of upside-down ways have created seeds of karma which naturally run their course, like the Aksha cluster. So from the beginningless time, the sentient beings then plant this seed, and it became, and this seed would run the entire course of the karma. And the sentient beings would still stay in this world. And this seed has ignorance and afflictions and produce all kinds of suffering. The analogy given here is that the whole course goes just like aksha fruit. This is the aksha fruit. Maybe there are different kinds of forms of it, but the meaning of it is that all different kinds of plants, out of one cluster of this fruit, it has 3 fruit on it. One is the analogy of karma and suffering,
这几个的话呢，就是实际上是互相都成为一种这个因缘啊，就是成为一种因缘。
because
那这
they
种成
are
为
of
因缘是什么呢？
causes
有
and
时候
conditions
是
for each other.
这个
One is
变成
then the
果，有时候呢
delusion,
就
the other
变
one is
成
bad
因
karma,
啊，
the
就是
other
那
one
个
is the
长孙
retribution
呢，
of
这个在
suffering.
他的
Sometimes
这个
they
狼书
would
什么
change
狼眼
orders.
睛的那个艺术
They
艺
could
术主
be
义的
of
艺术
the
主义
causes
的
for each other and
因
the
有
conditions
佛
for
经
each other
我
and the
觉得这个
fruition
佛
of
经呢
each
还
other.
是很有深
Therefore,
深的意
they
思
then
佛经
would
的意思呢，就
always
是
be
说是诸
together.
法这个
According to Master
意
Chang
识
Shui,
藏，常
he
与法亦然啊，就是
quoted
说
from
根互为过性，也
he
常
then
为
quoted
性
from
啊，
the
这句话
sutra.
呢
He said
意
that
思
all
说
dharmas
我
are
们这个
stored
诸法的话
within
呢，
the
实际
storehouse
上是
consciousness,
有很多的众生
and
呢
the
就是
storehouse
藏在
consciousness
阿赖耶
pervades
上
all
面
dharmas.
藏在我们的
These
这个意
two
识上
are
面
results of each
还有
other,
一些的话
and
呢，就
they're
是
always
藏在这
causes
个
of
外
each
面的
other.
外境的这个法上面。那么这两个呢，就是有时候是变成果，有时候是变成因。就像刚才
Sometimes
那
they
个恶
would
茶果一样，
be
恶
the
茶果是什么
causes
呢？
of each
它
other,
这
and
样的一
sometimes
个
they
呢，就
could
是
be
它掉
results
在
of
地
each
上，掉
other.
在地上的话，可能又变成这个种子，变成种子
Just
以
like
后
the
呢，有
fruit
这个现在
of
我们有些化
aksha
也是这样的，
cluster,
就是本来是这
when
个
they
是花
fall
是
into
这
the
个
ground,
果子，然
then
后
they
这
would
个
be the
这
seed
个
for
花
another
枝
tree
和有
again.
些花叶呢，就是掉在下面
Such
的话呢，
as some
就
of
又
the
慢慢慢慢
flowers
就成长
nowadays,
了。
after
所以
the
我
flower
们实
wither,
践
the
当中的
fruit
话
would
呢，就是
fall
有些是
down
藏在阿赖耶
in
上
the
面，比如
ground
这
in
个
the
可
earth,
喜
and
气
then
啊，
it would
就是
grow
从小
into
就是
flower
脾气不
again
好啊，或
in
者说
spring.
是嗔
There
心
are
很大，
people
就是这是前世给他
with
的，就是
great
藏在阿赖耶上面的一些种子。
great
有些的话
aggression
呢，
and
就是藏在
anger
外
when they
面
were
的
young,
啊，也就是
and
说
they
这
would
种习
grow
气
up
呢，
with
就
such
像我
kind
们
of
这个
habitual
前经
pattern
当
as
中讲
well.
的这个四
And
种过
sometimes
有
such
些
kind of
过呢，
habitual pattern
陈
is
述
very
于
much
外境
hidden,
上一样的，也
just
就是说，
as
它
the
就转生到特别
sutra
的
says.
贫穷的地方啊，有经济
Some
水的地
of
方啊，
the
有战乱的地
fruition would
方啊，有
ripen
这个非
within
常这个
one's
贫瘠的地方啊，
mind
等等
stream,
这
and
个
some
外
of
宿上
the
面，这些
fruition
因缘
would
的话呢，
ripen on
就
the
是有
external
一些变成因，有一些
external
变成果
situation.
啊，
For
有
example,
些
someone
有
would
些
grow
这个
up
善
as
的的话呢，就是
someone who
可
has
能把
lots of
这个因
anger,
缘
and
的意
someone
识
would
就
grow
放
up
掉，
as
而有
someone
些
who
的话
has a
呢，就
good
是在
temper,
这
however
个因
grows
上
in a
面呢，
poor
在不断的
environment.
造啊，就以前古大德呢也经常说是随缘这个孝就也，根木
As
造这个信仰，就是汉地经常
previous
传的这样的。
masters of
就是
Buddhism,
有一些
they
菩
would
萨，
say
有
that
一些成
whatever
就者的话呢，
adversity you
他就
encounter,
虽然这个
consider
依靠
it
这
a
个心
chance
智
to
的各
purify
种
your
这个感
previous
受的话
negative
呢，就是把
karmas
旧的业
rather
呢
than
就是全部
create
都已经消完
new
了，
ones
然后
through
呢就
it.
是再不会造一
It
个
is
新的
best
业。
to
但是
pacify your
凡夫的话
previous
呢，就是
negative
不可能的，
karma.
他
Do
一
not
边呢就
then
是可能
cultivate
这
the
个
new ones
就是
through
结束这
the
个前
bad
面的这
karma.
种旧的业，
Rather,
同时呢就
the
是不断
mundane
的
beings,
造
what
这
they
个
would do
新的
is
业啊，
that
就像
they
有
do
些
not
地狱众生的话呢，
not
他在地狱里
only
面
their
业感
previous
重，一
evil
边呢就是
karma
对
would
他的对
it
方
would
产生极大的
come to
伤害性
maturation.
啊。在
In
动物
fact,
相界当
lots
中的话呢，
of
一边感受
their
他
new
这个愚
karmas
蠢
would
的
also
动
come to
物，一边呢
fruition.
就是对
They
方
would
产生
create
这个
new
嗔恨心啊，
negative
产生
karmas
贪心啊，就
through
这
the
样
whole
不断的
process
这
of
个造
it,
业。
and they
所以我们
continuously
从
create
这个上
negative
面呢，就
karmas
是可
for
以看出来
themselves.
什么呢？就是无
And
始以来的这些众生呢，就是因为这个种种的这个业呢，就是不断的这个流转。
from this,
然后
we
这
can
样的
see
原
that
因呢，
all
就是
different
不
kinds
修
of
行人呢，
dharmas
不
would
能得到这
continuously
个无上
to
菩提啊，就是很多修行人的
circulate
话呢，
and
也是按理来讲，
generate.
通过修行以后，很多都
It
得到
would
这
be
个成
difficult
就
to get
是
out of
可以的。
the
但是因为我们众生
samsara
呢，
with
就是
such
前
kind of
面有这
creation
样的
of
一种
karma.
业力的束缚啊，有这样的业力的束缚，
So
所以
the
呢，
mundane
可能
beings
有
are
些修行
fettered
人很
by
想自己
the
精神成
karma,
佛、精神成就这样的，但实际
though
上呢，
many
就是不
people
但不能这
after
个成无上菩
they
提，
start
甚至的话呢，就是
practicing,
别称
they
圣闻啊，
want
甚至
to
的话呢，他是
attain
多罗城市
realization,
啊，
but
别
they
称的话
can't
一般
because of the
多罗
fetter
城或
of
者无
the
漏气
previous
度，然
negative
后最后
karma.
呢，有些就变成了声闻的。有些
And
呢
the
就是
reason
变成
those
圆
who
觉，这些的话
cultivate
倒是可以的，
cannot
至少也是能够
accomplish
达到
and
这个
surpass the
结
Bodhi,
果。
but
啊，
instead
更
reach the
更惨的
level
是什么
of
呢？就是有些
sound
人有些
clearer or of one enlightened to conditions or become accomplished in outside ways, or outside ways means the heretics as heaven dwellers or as demon kings, just as the demon Papian, or as members of retinues of demons, is that what they do not know the true fundamental roots and are mistaken and confused in their cultivation. So this is the reason why those would became or reborn in such a way, and these kinds of sentient beings are suffering greatly in samsara. And over here, the Buddha stated these two fundamental roots or two fundamental reasons that they're still dwelling in this samsara. So the first one is that they are
那么这些人呢，就像是什么呢？就像是这个猪啊，就是
So over
杀猪
here
的
it
话
is said
那
that
很想就是
these
一直
sentient beings
加
are
重
like
加
one
壮啊
who
就是
cooks
他
sand
这个
in
就
the
是
hope
这
of
个
creating
细沙
some
呢，就是做成
savory
什么呢？就是
delicacies.
在锅里面煮，就是煮完了以后呢，你就变
They're
成这个特别
cooking
好吃的这个面
the
油炸药
sand
的话，
in the
那是不
pot
可能的
and
事情了。就是我
cooking
们
it for a
平常
long
这个
period of
说是
time
这
and
个炸
hoping
的
that it
沙子
will
的话呢，就是
become
不会这个去油
would
啊，就不
become
会
a
成油的
delicious
油。
food.
那么总经呢，就是成绩啊，就是就纵然就是经历了这个微尘数
They
的
may
积累
pass
的话呢，
through
终
as
不能
many
得救。那
aeons,
么
and there
始
are
终呢，
modes
不可
of
能这个
dust,
得到
but
真
in
正
the
的这个
end they
成
will
就
not
啊。就是
obtain
他
what
这
they
里的话
want.
呢，像欧义大师他们也是会
According to
会
Master
讲到，
O.E.,
就
what
是
he
他
said
这
is
里
that
这个朱砂的话呢，就是指的是这个边际
by
啊，就是这个
cooking the
边际法。
sand,
然后那
it
个
is
就
then the
是下
imputed
做这
dharma,
个是这个盐城式，就是意思就是说我们
and
一块一
the
种边
food,
际，或
the
者一种
savory
分别盐来水，
delicacies, the
然后修
delicious
订的话
food
呢，那你
that
就是
people
最
hope
终的这个
for
盐城式的
is
下药一
the
样，而且这种
perfect
这种食物的话
result
呢，
or
就是永远也是
realization.
得不到的，就是可以说是
And
这个
by
是兴
taking
亡
such
啊，
kind of
就是根本就
imputed
是
dharma
得
and
不到，
hoping
就是
it
像
to
盐城式那样的，他
turn
们就
into
比
the
喻成什么呢？就
absolute,
像一个
to
丝，
turn
就
into
像一
the
个
perfect
丝子啊，
true
就是把它这
existence
个
that
变
is
成
not
这个丝，
possible,
或者是这个
just
色呢，就是
as
变成
if
真正的
one
这个身
hopes
子的话呢，
to
也是不可
transform
能
a
的。所以
snake
说，
into
它
a
根本
rope.
上就是对它有一种边际的法的话呢，
Because
那就是
if
最
at
终
the
的这个
root
真
of
实
it,
的
it is
新的这个
imputed
本来面目如实
and
呈现
it
的
is the
原成神呢，
false
就是很难以得到
and
的啊，因
imagined
为
dharma,
人
then
这个
how
要
could
修
you
行的话呢，就是一定要
how
要
how
获
could
得这
you
个真正的这个
receive
新
the
的本性。
truly
如果你
existent?
新的本性没有
Therefore,
认
it
识
is
到的话呢，
important to
那其他的这
recognize
个
the
很多
truth of
清
the
楚呢，
of your own
没有
mind.
用的。
Otherwise,
像
without
我们
recognizing
讲
the
过
true
吧，这
nature
个
of
当
your
时
mind,
呢，
all
这
the
个
other
有一个这
works
个妈祖
that
禅
you
师啊，就
do
是他
are
在
wasted
特别，他
efforts.
没有开悟之前特别的精进的修行。
Which reminds
他
me
精
of
进
a
修行的
story
时候
of
呢，就是当时
Mazu,
那
who
个
was a great
就是应该
meditator
是那个怀让禅师，
of
怀让禅
Chan
师的
of
话呢，
Chan
就是看到
Buddhism.
他心里有点
Master Huairang at that
做
time,
忏的时候，旁
seeing
边他就开始
Mazu
磨
was
石头。
meditating,
磨石头的时候
and
呢，这
he
个
was
因为一个人在
meditating
禅修，
with
一个人
great
在那个磨石
diligence.
头，肯定很那个。我
And
们这些道友也是一个人
then
在闭关，
this
一个人在那
Master
里
Huairang
起起伏伏的
started
拉东
to
西，咯吱咯吱的拉的话呢，
started
就很
to
烦。
trying
其实
to
也许他们是专门
grade a rock into
就是提供一
a
些
mirror.
方便啊。
And then it must be
提供
very
一些方
annoying
便。
to to
我
Mazu
的就是
because he was
看书
sitting
的
in
时候呢，这个
meditation.
旁边有一
Just
些
as when I was
原来
reading
那
my
个
books.
都不说吧，就这个说
Anyway, I don't want to get into my stories.
这样了，有一次说吧。
I will tell the story actually. No, I won't.
那不说的话，刚才那个怀让禅师呢，就是在旁边。
Anyhow, at that time, Master Huaiyang, he was then trying to grade this rock into a mirror. And upon hearing him grading this rock right beside him, Mazu then asked Master Huaiyang, saying that, "What are you doing?" And Huaiyang said that, "I'm trying to grade this into a mirror." And he said, "That's not possible." And then Master Huaiyang said, "It's the same thing that you're trying to meditate and become a Buddha. How could that happen?" So, with the teaching of Master Huaiyang to Mazu, he said that you should recognize the nature of your mind, and only that you watch the nature of your mind, you could attain enlightenment, but not through only meditation. Some of the masters who have deep connection to the Dharma and have lots of merit, when they listen to even one sentence of instruction, they would gain enlightenment right away. And for people who don't really have lots of merits, doesn't matter how much you give teachings to them, they don't understand it. They won't get the point of it. So over here it points it out that if you were to only sit statistically with the posture of meditation and meditate in such a way, you won't attain enlightenment. So, what are the two reasons over here that is listed by the Buddha? The first one is that the basic root of birth and death caused since the time without beginning by wrong use of clinging mind, which people mistaken for their own nature. And this mind that you use is the mind that sees upon conditions. Those are the mind that all sentient beings would use. This kind of clinging mind. Lots of people would then consider this clinging mind as the true nature of mind.
可以这么讲，所以大家有这个所谓的攀缘的话呢，就是也应该知道吧。
Over here, clinging or seize upon conditions.
王性的对境叫做所缘，然后这个所缘
The clinging mind and the object
可以说是能取所取吧。
are in relations of the perceiver and the perceived, or the fixer or the one who fixed upon and the object that is fixated. The six senses we would use our six senses to grasp towards the objects that's perceived by the six senses and have false thoughts upon them. Some masters, when they explain this part, they would explain certain way of saying that what is this clinging mind or this kind of the mind that seizes upon conditions mean is when, for example, you want to create a special relationship with someone and so on. They would then explain it in such a way, especially in the Chinese language circumstances. According to Vimalakirti Sutra, if it says that what is it to eliminate objectified mentation, it is done with non-attainment. If there's no attainment, there is no objectified mentation. Which reminds me of the story of Nanda. Nanda is a cousin of Shakyamuni Buddha and a brother of Ananda. It was said that Nanda had this wonderful relationship, loving, affectionate relationship with his wife, who was very beautiful. And then once the Buddha was begging for alms and Nanda was just around, and he told his wife that he's going to offer some rice to the Buddha. And Nanda's wife said that I only let you go for a very short moment, as short as the moment that my spit you can only leave for the moment of time that my spit won't dry on the ground. So she spit on the ground, and Nanda then went to the Buddha and made offering to the Buddha. And as much as he wanted to, the Buddha used his numinous penetration by retrieving slowly, and Nanda had to then walk further and further to make offering. And finally, he followed the Buddha to the Jeta Grove. And then Nanda said that I have to go back because my wife is waiting for me. And the Buddha said that it's okay, take your time, I just want to show you something. And then he took Nanda into the forest. And in the forest, they saw a horde of monkeys. Over there, the Buddha said that, what do you think? Who is more beautiful, that old monkey or your wife? Nanda answered, without a question, definitely my wife. She's really beautiful. And then the Buddha used his numinous penetration and took him to the heaven realm. And over there, they saw many beautiful heavenly maidens. And then the Buddha asked Nanda, saying that, who is more beautiful, your wife or the maidens in the heaven? And Nanda said that, no, compared to the heavenly maidens, my wife just looks like an old monkey. Then the Buddha took Nanda to the hell realm, and over there, then Nanda finally realized that it is
是不是？后来在阿罗汉怎么
it is more important to search for liberation. And upon waiting for Nanda to come back, the spit got dried for a long period of
肯
time.
定真我？你什么肯定
But
的？
Nanda then got
肯定是
ordained
估
and
计的
followed the Buddha to study. Did he finally attain
后面是
arhatship?
我忘了那个故事的很
I can't remember if Nanda attained
真
arhatship.
的吗？就是
Arhathood.
他回去了没有呢？
Did Nanda
没有
go
回去
back? No?
那后面那个本扎这个的情况怎么样？
And what
真的，我是
what
刚才
did
是
his wife do
辩
then?
辩价的，就是估计是不是他就一直看那个口水电干了也没有回
I
来
was
这情况
joking about the wife was staring at the
后面
spit.
对，后面没有讲，但是这个也可以说是一种攀岩的信呢。
I think they
这
didn't
这
really
种
say
带来
much
就是这样
about
的
the rest of the story.
这个是第
But
一个
that
方面轮回
also
的启发 第
shows
二个方面
about
是涅槃
the
的第二则呢
clinging
就是无始菩
mind.
提涅槃
And the
缘清
second
净
is
体
the
则
primal pure substance
则
of the
如镜
beginningless
则
Bodhi
什么
Nirvana.
世境缘冥郎生主缘缘所依者
It is the
这种
primal bright
这样的什
essence
么
of consciousness.
讲的是那个就是第二个是这个涅槃性嘛，就是无始以来呢，我们相续当中都具有
So
这
the
个
first one is the mind of
菩提
deluded
涅槃
mind, and the second one is the nirvana
这样的
mind
这
or
个
the
缘
Bodhi
缘
mind,
清净的这种明
where
智
it is says
就是
that
都
it
都
is
在
a primal
这里
pure substance of the
菩提和涅
beginningless
槃的
Bodhi
话呢
Nirvana.
就是很多
And
大的
Bodhi
包括
and
它解释成
Nirvana
就是三菩提啊、三涅槃啊，
would
也是按照
be
这个
explained
唯
by
识宗
great
的这个方式
masters
来讲
into
很多
three aspects
是这样的经典呢，就是按照唯识
first
宗的方
of
式
the
来讲
actual
的话，也
wisdom
可以
of
就是
the
汉地下是 对这个唯识宗就是也是比
of the
较
true
以前是
nature
比较
of
悠远的，
people
就
who
是
have
当时
accomplished the Bodhi and
什
so
么
on.
那个
But
唐
that's
僧
from
回来的
the
时候呢，就是那个接线法师也是
from the
说
mind
的
only
这个
school.
回去以后着重的弘扬这个唯识宗，
Master
因为你的
Xuanzang,
这个说法
he
众生在哪里，就是
his
确实后来还
whole
是
career
弘
was
扬的
focused
就非常
on
重
the
要。
propagation
但是
of
这个唯识宗，我
mind
个人
only
的看
school,
法呢，我也以前
of
学过这个
Yogacara
唯识
school.
宗，说实话，唯识
According
宗
to
跟中观
myself,
呢还是
in my opinion, because I've studied the mind
唯
only
识宗
school
的
as
这个
well, the
理论特
Yogacara
别
as
特别
well.
多。但
But
是呢，
to
真
my
正
humble
要了解
opinion,
的
I
是
really
比
feel
如说
that
这个什么边际式啊、
compared to
大圆满
Madhyamika,
大圆满信息修习大乘书啊，这些
I
里面
think mind only school
所以
is
包
more
含了很多讲唯
complicated
识
and
宗
more
的时候，我心里
complex.
有点这个，哎呀，有点累了，就是这个一谈起道
Whenever
理
I
说
get
是呢。
to the
所以在汉
mind
地的
only
话呢，
school, I
就是学习
often
这个
feel really
唯识
tired
宗
when I
很
have to
多大
give
德的对
teachings
这
on
个
it because
这
I
个
would
玄
have
奘
to
这个原理嘛，
investigate
来解
what is
唯
it going
识
to
宗。
talk
所以
about
我们
on
现在看到很
dependent
多的
or
注解的话呢，
on
基本
the
上按这个唯识宗的方式来
absolute or
讲
on the
讲这个这样
imputed,
这样
what
的
is
话呢，
it?
会比较
But
能懂一点。然后呢，我个人
so
认为
when
呢，
I
唯
look
识
at the
宗是比较
commentaries
难
that's
懂的。然
made
后
by
这个比
the
较像是中
previous
观
masters who study the
然后
mind
中
only
观呢，就是
school,
跟这
I
个
feel
大
that
圆满
they're
比较
a
接
little
近，
bit more
这个
difficult
大
to
圆满比
understand.
较直接。
And compared to the
说
mind
实话，
only school, I
现在
really
他们
feel
实
that
践上
Madhyamika is
有一
more
种说
is
法叫
easier
做
to
什么？这
understand,
个
and
这个佛
compared
陀
to
自己比较精
Madhyamika,
的人呢，越来越
I
复杂，
think
他看
the
的都是很
Mahati
难
is
很
more
难的。
is much
然
easier
后
to
就是素
understand.
质比较高的话呢，
It
就
is
是这个
said
沟通起来就
nowadays,
简单的，就
in
快
fact,
的，
it
就
is
爆发，
easier
就很容易
to
有这种说法，就是
to
能
speak
不
to
能用这种
those
比喻？但实际
people
上
who
呢，
are more
这个
successful and
唯
more
识宗一
cultivated
般
and
来
have
讲，这个确实
more
是它是大
educated,
乘文
and
化，
it
加
is
上我
much
们藏地的
more
话呢，
difficult
也
to
有这个特
communicate
别
to the
多的
ones
经
who
典和
are
原
less
点，按照唯
educated,
识宗
who
来解
are
释。
less
但是从这个
cultivated
框架的话
and
呢，
less
是
successful.
特别
I'm
的
not
这
sure
个
if this is
复
a
杂。
fitting
这样
analogy,
的，
but at
所以
least I
每
think
次都
this
是
is
以唯识宗
similar
的
in
观点
terms
来解
of
释的，
it's
我们
very
比较
difficult
比较
to
有
explain
难度，有
in
复杂，
the
就是最后得出
Chittamatra,
来
the
的话
mind
呢，
only
也是
school,
一
but
种
it's
迷信。
easier to
但是这种迷
understand
信的话呢，
from
具体是
the
怎么样呢？还需要去借
Madhyamika,
助
the
其他的
middle
这个
way
中观空性啊、
aspect
外
or
道
the
思想，
Ati
以这样
aspect
的
or
一个
the
具体的话呢，还是很难的。所以
Tadagagarba
说，我们以后
aspect
这
and
个
the Buddha nature
解释论点
aspect.
的时候呢，当然就是按照这个以前的，包括我看到这
When
个
we
多
give
益大师、圆益大
explanations
师啊，
of
他们都把
the
这些
sutras, I
这样的
think
思
it's
考呢，就是
important to
他们以
make a reference of those great masters from those previous masters. I would cross-reference Master OE and great masters like such. I am sure that the way they explained this sutra is from the aspect of how they were taught from their masters. But when we're trying to understand this text, I think it's easier to explain this text with the Madhyamika aspect, and definitely I think the Ati, the great perfections aspect to understand this sutra would be very easy. Anyhow, what it points to is what this primal bright essence of consciousness is Alaya, that can bring forth all conditions. Because of conditions, you consider it to be lost. Because people do not really understand this kind of this primal bright essence of consciousness. This Alaya is very difficult for the mundane people to discover its true essence, true nature. In fact, the mind could then easily manifest all kinds of phenomena, all kinds of animate and inanimate. But to completely understand it is very difficult. To completely bring forth all such would be very difficult. And it is also explained that Bodhi is from the realization aspect, and Nirvana is from the abandonment or the eradication aspect of realization. You can say that this primal bright essence of consciousness is Buddha nature. You could say that this is the Alaya, not the Alaya consciousness, it is the Alaya. In fact, to recognize Buddha nature is rather very easy. According to the records of the transmission of the lamp, where it says that those who realize it knows it is the Buddha nature. Those who don't realize it call it a soul. For the people who recognize this nature, then they can know that this is the Buddha nature. And for those who don't realize it, they would give it all kinds of names, such as soul, such as Atman, all different kinds of names. And this mind of nirvana is very difficult to recognize, it is said, for the sentient beings, for the mundane sentient beings. And living beings lose sight of the original brightness of this Alaya. Therefore, though they use it to end their days, they're unaware of it, and without intending to, they enter the various destinations of the 6 realms in samsara. Without recognizing it, doesn't matter how diligent you are, you'll be entering into the 6 realms of samsara again. Just as Fudashi, a lay practitioner, said, if you do not recognize, just as he said, you sleep with this Buddha nature every night and wake up with it every morning, but people don't see it at all. Great masters would say that this is really important. These two points that's brought by the Buddha, the mind of the mundane and the mind of nirvana. In fact, these are the 2 keys of Surangama, and this is taught through an instructional way. such as Master Oyi would consider this as of crucial importance out of Surangama Sutra. So first one is that the mundane being do not recognize their mind that clings and mistaking it to be the true nature. And the second one is that people do not recognize their Buddha nature. So I think if you were to understand some of the teachings from the Tathagata Sutra, you will be able to understand it easier.
那么我们下面呢，就是再讲一下那个，这个是就刚才两个这个根本问题已经讲完了。然后
We've
呢，
already
我告诉
finished the
阿难
two
呢，
crucial
不是说这个像
questions,
通过三摩
or
地的
two
方法来
crucial
就知道这个
points
意
brought
思
by the
嘛
Buddha. And then the Buddha said that Ananda, since you now wish to know about the path of
分
shamatha,
享
because I think Ananda, after encountering some problems or obstacles that happened to him, he really wanted to practice.
然后呢，就是他就回来
Just as some of our masters, when they go out and teach the Dharma, some of them, a group of them, would say that they have to study harder because there were people outside of Larunga ask them very difficult questions, and then they feel that they really lack the systematic studying and contemplation. Therefore, they want to do that. And there are people who would go outside and teach, and they encounter some obstacles, and they vow to practice more after they come back. And over here, Ananda then said that he wants to recognize his nature of mind through shamatha, through practice. And over here, the Buddha said that since Ananda, you want to then transcend this birth and death, then I will question you further. In fact, over here, this kind of questioning of the Buddha is very much similar to the direct pointing out of the nature of mind that is taught in Vajrayana. Over here, the Tathagata raised his golden arm and bent his 5 wheeled fingers. Some says over here the 5 wheeled fingers is that he then make his fingers. In fact, the Buddha then closed his hands into a fist. Some say that he then sequentially from one finger to the next and closed his hands into a fist. And then he showed his fist to Ananda, saying that, do you see? Do you see the Buddha? In Vajrayana teaching, such as Pamasamava or Sri Sangha, where they would point into the space and say, and direct their disciples to recognize the nature of mind. Some great masters would do that. In fact, over there, then the Buddha showed Ananda his fist and asked Ananda, do you see? Ananda over here there said that, yes, I see. And then Buddha continued to ask, what do you see? And Ananda said, I see. I see the Tathagata raised his arm and bent his fingers. Previously, the Buddha asked Ananda, how do Ananda sees the Buddha, perceive the Buddha? And this is the second time of Buddha asking Ananda. In the previous teaching on the 7 attempts of searching for the mind, in fact, over there it was the destruction of the 2 of the 5 skandhas, that is the skandha form and skandha of sensation. And over here, it is more on the consciousness. This is the commentary based on Master Han Shan. In Master Han Shan's commentary, he said that my best effort of giving the commentary of on the commentary of Surangama Sutra, he said that's my best contribution. Just as how I said that my contribution to this flight of the Garuda is on my outline. But sometimes I feel that his outline is a little too detailed and it's very difficult to understand. But I really feel that a great masters like him who invested his whole life into studying this one sutra, that is the Surangama Sutra, his understanding of it and his way of outlining it with logic is very useful and it's very helpful. I'm not sure if you studied it beforehand, before our class, and I really encourage you to do so. Anyhow, Ananda then over here started saying that I see Tathagata raise his arm and bend his fingers into fist of light, which then dazzles my mind and my eyes. And then Ananda says that I see the Buddha, then I see his fist of light, which dazzles my mind and my eyes. In fact, Ananda, he could perceive not only the fist, rather he see it with the lights. Just as just as another disciple of Buddha said that I could see your light, I could see that we're very much similar, but the only difference is that you have some light. In another story, lots of the members of the Shakyamuni clan, they said that I could not see the beautiful figure of the Buddha, of the Tathagata. I could not see the golden figure of the Tathagata. How is it that we do not see it? We're of the clan of the Shakyamuni. What is it that blocks our eyes from seeing your true figure of the golden body, of the golden figure? And then the Buddha said that what you should do is to confess, to make confession, and to supplicate to the past, present, and future Buddha. And then you should prostrate diligently. Because of the purification of their negative karma, they finally got to see the beautiful golden figure of the Buddha. Unlike Devadatta, in fact, Ananda could see the golden body and the body that radiates light of the Buddha. So Ananda was the one who understood the Buddha, who is very much connected to the Buddha, who could see all the merits of the Buddha. And the Buddha continuously then to ask him, saying that, well, since you can see, then what do you see it with? Because previously Ananda answered saying that I see it with my mind. But over here Ananda got a little smarter, saying that the
用眼
members
睛
of
看
the
到，
great assembly and I all see it with our eyes.
我用眼睛看到的。
I see it with my
然后
eyes,
佛陀
he
呢就是
answered.
告诉了这个阿
Then
难
the
了，
Buddha
就是
said to
如今
Ananda,
大
You
王
have
呢就是
answered
说是
me
这
by
个，你今
saying
天回
that
答我就是如
the
来的这个
Tathagata bends
树
his
树
fingers
树
into a
去
fist
下，
of light,
然后呢就是
which
做这个
dazzles
光
your
就是
mind and
照耀这
eyes,
个
and
你
your
的这个
eyes
心的话
are
呢，你
able
所
to
是用
see.
这个眼睛
But what
见到
is the
那你
mind
眼睛就是
that
可以
is
见到
dazzled
的，
by my
但是你
fist?
不是前面就是说是什么就是照耀我这个心目嘛，就是心目，那这样的话那就是
Since
你
you've
这
already
个
said
信来讲
that
怎么会是，就
it
是我的这个
dazzles your
看
mind
来
and
怎么
eyes,
会是照耀你的这个
this is
心
your
的，
eyes are
这一
able
点
to
是
see,
怎么
but
见
then
到的？这个
what
所以
is the
下
mind
面
that
呢
is dazzled by?
就开始这个
Then the Buddha
就
continuously
问这
to
个问题。
ask
有
this
些
question to
有
Ananda.
些大德呢，就是在注释里面就是也特别有感这个阿难的意思，就是他是
In
诵诵这个
the
法文嘛，不断地
lots of the
然后
Chinese
不断地
commentaries,
不断地给他
we can
如
see
果他
great
的
masters from the
这个
past that
提
they
问就是
feel
没有
very
这个
grateful
问
to
号，或者是
Ananda
没有
because
问
they
到
feel
的，
that if
可能
Ananda
就
were
这
to
个
stop
这个
asking
发挥的
questions
话呢，
and
就
were
会有
to
这个继续
not
下去。
ask the
所以
right
当时呢，就
question
是佛
or
陀给他
answer
这
the
样
right
讲的时候，那
answer
就阿难呢
correctly
就是
to the
回答
questions
说，
of
就
the
是如来
Buddha,
这个如今就是
then the Buddha
真心
won't
所，
be
你
able
这
to
个寻
give
找
such
真心，
profound
就
teaching
是
to
说
us.
你现在就是寻找就是我们这个信的所在的，就是在这个问题上的话呢，而我用这个信
Ananda then replied,
推去
as
寻
the
找
Tathagata is
我
asking
就
where
这
the
个
mind
从我的
is,
这个信的一切力量来，就是
now
开始
that I use
推
my
导和
mind to
寻
search
找
for
和
it
观察和
thoroughly,
还有
I
这个思想
propose
的这
that
样，那这
precisely
样的话呢，
what is
你不是
able to
问我你的信在
investigate
哪
is
里，
my
自己
mind.
就是通过我的最大的这个最大
I
效
tried
率
my
最大努
best.
力的就开始
I
观
tried
察我
the
的这个信，
hardest
就
to
是
find
有
where
推
my
辞
mind
啊，就
is.
是有
I
寻找啊，
used
有
the
有去这个
searching, the
追
method
追
of
逐啊，就是
searching
这样
and
的。
method
那
of
这样的话呢，就是
chasing
应该是
after
这个
it
观察
and
者、寻找者、
investigating.
推断者应该
And
是
then
他。
I understand
能
that
对
my
这个
mind
我
is
是
the
这样想
one
的，那你问我的时
who
候呢，
is
我正在
able to
你问我的是，
investigate.
我
Is
们有时候
precisely
另
what
外
is
呢
able
也
to
是有
investigate is my
深
mind.
尬的，就是心在哪儿，就是上师心地啊，有些密法当中的心
In
在。
the
好
heart
像
drop
我们
of
是
the
大学生
Guru
活里
of
面有
Lama
就
or
是
the
心在哪
Yeshi
儿，就
Lama,
心是哪
it
儿，就是这
has
样问的。那
the
这个时候呢，
questions of
你就
where
啊，
is the
我的心
mind,
到底是怎么样，用心来观察
where is
心
it
的话，他
located.
认为是
Then
你
at that
正在
moment,
去寻找它，
Ananda
这可
then
明
was
明
saying that
你要
the
做
the
的就应
one
该是
who
这
is
样
searching
的。
for the mind is the
然后佛
mind.
陀就开始呵斥他，就是
And then
做
the
的
Buddha
就
said
是
that, hey,
我们藏文里面不是很明显，然后有些注释里
this
面说是这个是一个广东那边的一个语气词，马
this
人
one
的，
that's translated
说
into
是
Chinese
不
was
知道广东的
said
会不会说
in
这
a
样，因为当时翻译
commentary
的是从
that
广东这边翻译的， 然后呢
this
就是一
particular
般带有
word
一些
is
明朗方
from
面
the
的一
southern
些
part
这个
of China.
语气，
It's
那问题
rather a
当中是很
dialect,
明显的，但是
and
呢，
especially
凡是佛陀
connected
就特
to
别
how
显得
where
信
the
就是
translator
阿难就是
was,
呵斥
then it's
说
probably
就是
true,
是
isn't it?
是非如是，就
I'm
是
not sure
这
if it
你
is.
怎么这样呢？
And
就
then
是
over
说
here, the
了
Buddha
我
said
自
that,
己，
hey,
这个不是我
I've
的
told
信
you so
啊，就
many
是这个
times that
笨
this is
蛋，
not
就
your
是
mind.
还不知道啊，
That's very silly
就
of
这么
you.
长时间的事，你
I've
连
been
这个
teaching
都
you
不
for a
知道。
long period of time, and you don't even
那这个时候
understand
呢，
this?
阿难呢就是居然就是阿难就是吓死了，就
And
特别
then
害怕，
Ananda,
就是因为佛陀
feeling
就是当
very
场就开始
startled,
说
and
呵
he
斥
leaped
责备
from
他，
his
哎，
seat
就是说是
because
已经说了
the
多少次，
Buddha
就是前面的七
then
个七个问题的给你
reprimanded
回答
him,
了还不明白，就是现在
started
还
to
说是
scold
正
him
在推
by
这个
saying
那
that
个
I've
就是
told
这
you
个
so many
这
times.
个
How
是
could you
怎么
say
回事？
that the
那
water
这个
is
时
the
候呢，
mind?
就
How
是
could you
阿
say
难就是
that?
必作啊，就是
And
必
then
作
startled,
合掌，
Ananda
然后他就
leapt
一开
from
始
his
自己
seat,
做就马上起
stood
来，
and
其他
put
那
his
就
palms
很好
together.
的，他一直不思想。如果其他一些心都不
Look
好
at
的话，
Ananda
那在
with
公共
his
场合
great
当中这样一说
personality
的话，
who
那就
was
马上就走
humiliated
了，
and
就是
scolded
啊，
in
就那
front
我
of
走
the
了，
public.
哎，就
He
是
would still be there
对
and
吧？
ask
那阿难
continuously
没
to
有这
ask
样。
questions to the Buddha. So
阿
Ananda
难
is
呢，就
very
是
good
他
in
一
that
直那
in
个，他
such a
就
way.
就开始有点这个大动作，
And then
就是不好意
Ananda
思，
in
然
front
后
of
呢，就是
the great assembly,
然后站着这个在另外一个地方呢拜佛
and
念
he
佛
stood
这
up
个是
and
呢
put his
当
palms
隐客
together and said to the Buddha,
那这个不是我
"If
的
this
心
is
的话，
not
会
my
不会
mind,
透露
then
出
what
一下
is it?
到底是什么？我都现在是很难
I
很
am
那个
I am
亲
so
亲自的时候，我
confused.
就问的很失败的，就没有。
I've asked
那
you
我现在
7
还是
questions
不知道，那这个
previously,
不是我
and now I
的
still
不是我
don't
的
know
心，
where my
然
mind
后
is
就
and
开
what
始
my
告
mind
诉
is.
他，报告阿难呐。
And
那么
then
此时
the Buddha
呈
said
现
to
虚妄
Ananda,
也
"It
是
is
相
your
向
perception of false
不如
appearances
正
based
性，
on
说是我们
external
这个牵
objects,
引虚妄，
which
天天
deludes
虚妄
your
什么
true
意思
nature
就是
and
一
have
报
caused
成
you
是这
from
个外
beginningless
面
time
这个
to your
谦虚的
present
这
life
个
to recognize a
这个
thief
相貌
as
或
your
者说
son."
是这个 外境的，外境的这个嗔就是外境，外境就是带来的这个虚妄的这个相，虚妄的。
This kind of appearances based on external
外境
objects
没有一个
is
真
the
实
thing that
存在
dilutes your
外
true
境带来的
nature.
这个虚妄的这个
This kind
分类呢，
of
就是其实迷惑
external
就是
objects
它这里
has already diluted your true nature,
心脏的心，意思就是说，我们这个外境
which
就是带来的
means,
各种各样的特别迷惑的这
in
个
fact, all of
迷乱
these
的这个现象的话，
illusions, all these
迷惑了你的
diluted
心，
appearances had already
所以你
diluted
从这
your
个无
true
始以来
nature,
外境
had
的话
already
呢，就
diluted
是
your
把
mind,
这个罪呢，就是当做自己的儿子一样，
and has
这样
already
的话
caused
就
you
失去了你自己本有
being diluted
本
for
来
from
本
the
有的光明
beginningless
的这种
time.
信心，这样一来的话
And
呢，
you are
就是
recognizing this delusion as a thief, just as you recognize a thief as your son. To lose your eternal source and to undergo the wheels turning. In fact, lots of the what we perceive is no other than our deluded recognition of the external phenomena, external objects, and we grasp onto them as a solid existence. And because of that, then we've been in the in samsara, in this turning wheel of samsara from beginningless time.
本来是就是对我们还是损害很大的，就是这些虚妄假象的，但把它当作是自己的儿子一样，我们一直不
The
断地
delusion
就是一个字，就是在自己
that
家里
we
养的，
perceive
把它当作儿子的话，
and
那肯
we
定
would
是很
perceive
失败
such kind
的。
of
那
delusion
同样
as a
的，我
truth
们对
is no other
外境
than
的真实存在
recognize
的话，那
a
其实
thief
就
to
像
be
这个
your
罪
own
一样，
son.
但是我们没有认识它，就是
In
一直
fact, the
他说
external
什么，他说就
delusions
是外
are
境
the
的虚妄
thieves.
的好看的哦，认为是好看，好听
And
的认为是好，
you
实
would
用的认为
take
是实用，
what
所有的
is
这些妄想的话呢，我们就跟
you
着
would consider
这样
that
一来的
music
话
is
呢，
good
我们就
is
失去了我们
good
自
to
己
your
本有。
ears, it's
这样
very
一来，我们
nice
就
to
在
listen
这个
to, and
啊
things are
今天
beautiful
这
to
个
look at, and so on. So today we'll stop here that to undergo the wheels turning.